Okay, well, good morning, Miss Ball. How are you?
Good morning, Miss Hanie. I'm doing well. It's Friday.
It is Friday, which is always a blessing. So, first of all, let me
Yes.
just say thank you so much for letting me come in and observe your class the other day. I always find that, like, anytime I'm with you, I generate so many amazing ideas from the things that I see with you. And so, I always appreciate any time that we're able to collaborate. So, we'll just go ahead and get started today. I just want to go ahead and say a couple things though before we really dive in. One thing I totally noticed about you, Miss Ball, was that you have just excellent pedagogical knowledge. So it's clear to me that your content knowledge is there. The rigor of your lesson, everything was just right on point. And I just wanted to go ahead and just throw that out there to you prior to us diving in today.
I
So,
appreciate it.
as we've discussed, we know that this is going to be our first of 4 sessions that we'll do together. And so today we're just going to kind of dive in and let's talk about the lesson that I observed. I think you had told your students you were starting your new unit and
Correct.
you looked at a text entitled After Auschwitz. And I wrote down that that's a speech by Elie Wiesel. I was really impressed how well your students handled that because I know that Elie Wiesel wrote Night, and I can remember reading that in high school. And even
Yeah.
then, it was deep and it was dark. So
Right.
I was really impressed with just the maturity level of your students, and it's obvious that you've truly set that standard for them when they are reading text like that. That it's not something that you joke about, but you truly do respect everything that was written. So I know we both had a chance to kind of take a debrief on your lesson. So
hmm
the first thing I want to ask you is this. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being that this was the best lesson you've ever done, we could publish this on the teaching channel, we could put you on TV, to a 1 being this is the worst lesson I've ever done, I would change everything. How would you rate this lesson?
I would say probably like a 7 or 8. And only because I'm very critical of myself anyway.
Mhm.
So there's always room for growth, I feel like, in a lesson. But I feel like the transition from the previous unit to this unit, they were very invested in the previous unit because it was like stuff they could relate to. It was things that affected them. It was stuff they used because it was based on like social media platforms. So I really was kind of hesitant to see how they were going to transition into this more like in-depth, very deep and sometimes dark pieces of information on the Holocaust. But I was really excited because they were into it. They were interested in it. And I think it just was that injustice piece. So I do feel like the connection was still there. But for me, myself, there would probably be things I would change about the lesson of how I taught it to them. Not necessarily the content, but just some different activities or different things that I would have done in the work session or the lesson.
Okay, yeah. I love that you say all that because what I was most impressed with is that you mentioned like emotional and ethical appeals in your lesson. And I was thinking to myself personally, like, wow, I don't know if I could technically distinguish from an ethical or an emotional appeal, but the way you presented it to them, you're absolutely right. Your students were very adamant about that ethics, that issue of
Right.
this is wrong. And they didn't
Mm-hmm.
say this is wrong. They were really able to support why it was wrong. And so I was really taken back by that. And that's what I'm saying. Like your pedagogical knowledge is just superb. Like I want to, I'm like, I need to strive to be more like that because just the way you were able to present that and they were, like you said, they were engaged with it and you hooked them. You truly hooked them with a piece of text that, may or may not have been really something they can relate to, but
Mm-hmm.
it was excellent.
Well, I
So
appreciate it.
what you say a 7 or 8, and there are things that
Mm-hmm.
you would have improved. So tell me what were you pleased with? And I think you kind of hit some of this already with like the student engagement and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, I think, we're working as a school on the gradual release model. So we did implement that through the text because I wanted them to feel comfortable with the text, obviously. So I do think the opening was good with the video and everything to give them background knowledge because they were coming from all different places with the Holocaust. Some knew a lot, some didn't know too much. And they didn't really know a whole lot about Elie Wiesel and who he was. So that was great. I felt like that was a good part. But when I got to the work session, I still felt like they were still engaged. But when it came to the independent piece, it was hard to like kind of let them go because I wanted to make sure they understood certain parts of the text that I wasn't going to read with them. And so I was just wondering maybe if I could have implemented a little bit more of like student communication before that independent piece, because I modeled, we did one together, then they went independently. But I think it could have been beneficial if they could have been in small groups to discuss it, and kind of go through it together, because it is that heavy text. And sometimes it is helpful to hear different opinions about it, because we all come from different backgrounds. So I would have maybe implemented that.
Okay. And so I think that really kind of answers like the next question of what you would change. So I'm hearing a lot about the student engagement piece and having your students work collaboratively. And yeah, I know with our school doing the gradual release model, we've added that additional piece where it's no longer I do, we do, you do, but it is you do together, then you do independently. And I think it's important for us to remember that we're always not going to hit all four pieces.
Right.
But I think, yeah, I definitely could see some places where that could have been implemented. So for the lesson to have been a 10, what do you think? What do you think your students would have been doing? Because your focus seems like it's on student engagement.
The students would have been collaboratively discussing something we're still working on. And it's very difficult in a virtual setting. When I've got kids in the room, because they can talk to each other, like just to turn to someone and talk to them. But they still don't have, I feel like that they're not as comfortable, even though they knew each other last year and stuff. Even when I put them in rooms, they'll use the chat feature more than unmuting, which takes longer to get your stuff out and be like, oh, I agree with you, or I disagree with you. So I think I would like to see that part of them coming out more now that they are transitioning to ninth grade. I just want that discussion piece because some of the questions were heavy. Some of them were text embedded. And so I felt like they needed to be able to have that text evidence to support what they were saying. So that's something I would like to see from my students, is the discussion piece and how to carry that on without me giving them guidance on questions or prompting them to answer a question in a discussion.
So what do you think that would look like? So without you prompting them and with them leading these discussions on their own, what do you think for you to feel like this was a success? What do you feel like that would need to look like?
I think it's on me. I need to make sure that they have roles so they understand like the expectation. A lot of modeling. I have a student teacher now, so I think that'd be helpful if I could talk with her, or even with my co-teacher, like us showing what a healthy discussion looks like around a piece of text. And for the people that aren't, if I didn't have a student teacher or whatnot, maybe I'm going to model it with my colleagues to show so that they know what that piece looks like. I don't think they don't know how to talk about the text. I don't think they know how to discuss the text with their peers. So I think I would have to implement roles, expectations, and modeling so that they know what it should look like.
Okay. How do you think you would measure that change? So if you push that out to your students, you're modeling the roles, you're providing them with roles, how do you measure that that's a success?
In the past, I've used reflection sheets for the students. So like after you have your discussion today, let's just be honest and rate ourselves either with a scale or specific things to show how you contributed to the discussion, what made you feel uncomfortable, like asking them those questions so that I can help them. I can assume why they don't, but after going through it a couple of times and getting that feedback, I think I could gauge how well they feel comfortable with it. Obviously, also going into like the breakout rooms and listening to the discussions myself has given me insight to know that that is a place that we need to work on. So just kind of continuously doing that as well. Having those discussion starter, we give sentence starters all the time, but also discussion starters so they even know how to respond to somebody in a text. And then they're comfortable with that. So I think I could do reflection sheets for them. Even my observations as well. So I think that would kind of measure how well it's going.
Okay. So like you mentioned, your students are moving to ninth grade, and we know that when they get to ninth grade, obviously it's going to be a lot of group discussion and working collaboratively to conquer a task or conquer a question. So Would you want that to be your goal, student engagement and having them work collaboratively? Would that be a goal you'd like for you and I to work on for the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, because I think that it can be used with any lesson. It's not specific to just one particular thing. And that's a skill and a prioritized standard that they have to know. Like you said, it's something that's a priority because they need to, beyond even high school, they need to be able to know how to communicate with someone. So yeah, I would be up for finding ways to implement that successfully.
Okay. And it sounds like this would be something that would truly benefit you and your students. Would that be a fair
Right.
statement?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. So what strategy do you feel like could assist you with this goal?
Um, Honestly, some things that have been helpful is like I said, the modeling, but even like with writing, I think it could be translated into discussion as well, because I'll show them model pieces and then we critique it. So maybe it would be beneficial for them to be able to see it and be able to say like, oh yeah, this is what they were doing that made the discussion keep going. And they actually are the critical, like, evaluators of what it should look like and what they didn't do well, as well. So maybe that would be something that we could maybe model in some kind of way. I don't even know if that's like me and you doing that, or like we find videos of students engaging,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. hmm Okay, so what instructional tool do you feel like? Because I know you're someone that I've seen that you have a pretty strong, even instructional technology pedagogy. Um, what instructional tool do you feel like you'd be comfortable maybe using with your students to achieve that goal?
Well, in the past we've used Flipgrid. I know that there's something that they've
Mhm.
used before as well. Um, and they've always used it to create their responses, but they've never like responded to someone else. So that might
Hmm.
be a different way to take it to a different level, to like baby steps to discussion, that way. I'm also familiar with like Jamboard and things like that. So like even if it isn't talking, if they can write it, then it makes it a little bit more comfortable for them to eventually get to that discussion piece. So
Hmm.
I'm not sure how small of steps need to be taken before
Hmm.
getting to like full on me and you like we're doing now and having a discussion in a
Absolutely.
room.
Yeah. So I like both of those. And those were actually two things I was going to mention. And from what I've heard, I almost feel like it seems like right now you're really wanting them to be able to work together and have roles.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking if
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have roles, I don't know if we want to use Flipgrid right now because I'm trying to figure
Right.
out like how would we implement roles with Flipgrid. But I
Right.
do think we could do it with a Jamboard. And I know you mentioned breakout rooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm thinking is what if you posted your questions in Jamboard and then we provided your students with different roles in a
Mm-hmm.
breakout room, and then they each took on a role and completed their Jamboard.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Okay. So what I'm thinking is this, because you just mentioned like, should it be you and I modeling? Should it be you and your student teacher, your co-teacher? Should it be students modeling? I think it would be really cool if we did both. I think, you and
Mm-hmm.
I can get together. We can go ahead and
Mm-hmm.
put on our calendars when we could get together and do maybe a quick modeling, but also maybe pull a couple of students that maybe are, I know you have a gifted class, maybe go ahead and pull a couple of them so that they see their peers as well, not just, okay, well, these
Right.
are adults, so obviously they know
Right.
how to do this. And it doesn't even have to be, academic. It could be,
Right.
something general. It could be something about the unit you're on, but
Right.
showing them, okay, these are my peers and they are
Mm-hmm.
able to do this. So I know that I can do this. And honestly, what I would love to do is come in with you and let's do this together one day. We'll do one class together and then at least then like you kind of have an opportunity to have another person in there with you to kind of guide this. And then you go out on your own and I'll come back and just kind of observe and see how it goes.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, so let's look at your calendar and we'll kind of link something up for next week. Maybe we can just talk on Monday and kind of figure out what your unit, well, not your unit, but your plans look like next week. We'll figure out where we could embed this strategy where
Okay.
it's most authentic and it's not just like an add-on, but it will truly, provide your students with an opportunity to collaborate. So let's meet back together on Monday and we can do that. And then we'll take it from there. But I'm really excited about this. I think your kids are going to truly benefit.
Me
And
too.
honestly,
Yeah.
having this conversation with you, it makes me think, well, like I need to do this with my kids as well because I hadn't thought about the roles piece. That's always my biggest
Right.
thing is I'll put them in a group and I'm like, but only one of you is talking.
Right.
No one is writing or no one is, responding. So yeah, I think we'll meet Monday. We can kind of maybe come up with roles. I love that
Hmm.
you said discussion starters, so maybe even like how to respond. I
Right.
agree with you because, or, clarify your thinking because I feel this way. So we can look at that as well.
Okay.
Okay, well, awesome. Well, thank you again so much. Again, it's always a pleasure when I'm with you.
Yes. Agreed. I couldn't agree anymore.